If there's one fast food joint that just about everyone can agree on, it's Taco Bell. Taco Bell has been around for years, and throughout all the decades it's been serving up delicious, Mexican-inspired grub. People haven't stopped being obsessed with it. The trouble with real life is that it's mostly super boring. So when Hollywood makes a movie about real life, it kind of has to embellish, move things around, make up characters, and tell lies. When the real life in question is Freddie Mercury's, though, it's harder to justify those decisions. Freddie Mercury's life was not boring. Whether you need a cheap meal, a quick meal, or have a very specific craving for something cheesy and meaty, Taco Bell has you covered. Additionally, Taco Bell's value menu is always on point, and they are always coming up with new creations that are somehow even more delicious than the one before it, and they aren't afraid to spice things up, literally. He was brilliant, flamboyant, and one of the greatest voice talents of the 20th century. Taco Bell is truly a beloved fast food establishment, but since it's been around for so long, it makes sense that it's gone through a ton of changes, especially on the menu. Taco Bell has had menu items that disappeared for a while, then came back, and they've also had items that were just straight up discontinued, to the disappointment of fans all over. Seriously, some of Taco Bell's discontinued items were pretty popular and delicious, while others probably did need to go. Also, he was a rock star. So, if you're curious to see where your favorite Taco Bell menu item of the past lies, keep reading. We've ranked popular discontinued Taco Bell items from worst to best. 11. You'd kind of have make up stuff in order to make his life seem not interesting. Still, when Bohemian Rhapsody finally made it to theaters, some fans were bewildered by the historical inaccuracies and timeline liberties filmmakers appeared to have taken with the iconic singer's life. Maybe it made for better storytelling, or maybe it was just sensationalism, or maybe the writers were just trying to sanitize and sterilize for a PG-13 audience. Seafood salad. As much as you might love Taco Bell, there's no denying the fact that their seafood salad was probably their worst menu item ever. We don't know the real answer, but we do know that Bohemian Rhapsody did tell a few lies. It was introduced in the 80s, reportedly to help the establishment compete with McDonald's Filet-O-Fish, but it just didn't cut it. The salad doesn't sound too bad when you just look at the ingredients. An edible taco shell bowl filled with lettuce and other vegetables, all topped with white fish, snow crab, and shrimp. But when you think about getting seafood from Taco Bell, yeah, that just doesn't sound appealing at all. Obviously, the seafood salad didn't stay on the Taco Bell menu for too long, but it's still interesting to look back at advertisements for it and see how hard the chain was pushing the new menu item. A refreshing change from anything on a bun. One commercial boasts of the seafood salad, clearly referencing the McDonald's fish sandwich. But clearly, consumers were smart enough to avoid this particular menu item, and it was soon discontinued. And let's just say, no one is running to their nearest Taco Bell to demand they bring back their seafood salad. 10. Except for all the stuff about his cats. That was all totally true. Getting the band together. In reality, Queen had a much slower evolution than the one portrayed in the film. Mercury already knew Brian May and Roger Taylor. He'd been introduced to them by Tim Staffel, who was the bass player in the pre-Freddie version of Queen, the band called Smile. Spicy chicken Crunchwrap Supreme. These days, one of Taco Bell's most popular menu items is without a doubt the Crunchwrap Supreme. The Crunchwrap Supreme is definitely filling, and not exactly a simple menu item. But at the time, Mercury was singing with other groups, notably a band called Ibex, which later changed its name to Wreckage. It features ground beef, nacho cheese, lettuce, tomatoes, sour cream, and a crispy tostada shell all wrapped up in a flour tortilla and then grilled to perfection. But in 2006, Taco Bell decided to change things up and offer a new alternative to the Crunchwrap Supreme, the Spicy Chicken Crunchwrap Supreme. According to Queen Vault, the first time Queen members were on stage together was actually at an Ibex show in 1969, when Brian May and Roger Taylor joined Mercury, who was still using the name, Bulsara, on stage for an encore. By the time Staffel decided to quit Smile, May, Taylor and Bulsara, Mercury, were sharing an apartment, so they were hardly strangers. So there was no shy approach at the end of a Smile show and no impromptu audition. Unfortunately, it was a total miss.
It might seem smart to offer a chicken alternative to the ground beef typically in the Crunchwrap Supreme, but this menu item just wasn't as good as its original. After all, there's a reason why most Taco Bell items are made with ground beef. it's just more flavorful and what you expect from a taco or burrito. So, once the spicy chicken Crunchwrap Supreme was discontinued, it wasn't missed at all. As they say, why fix what isn't broken? 9. It is true that Staffel's departure gave Mercury the in he needed to join the group, but he was already a part of May and Taylor's musical circle and had been for some time. The marriage proposal, the relationship between Freddie Mercury and his longtime girlfriend Mary Austin, probably came as a surprise to viewers who were more familiar with Mercury's reputation as a gay man living the rock star lifestyle. Grilled stuffed nacho. In 2013, Taco Bell brought on a new menu item with the grilled stuffed nacho. But a lot of what the film says about his relationship with Austin is true. He did spend many years in a heterosexual relationship, and the two of them were actually engaged to be married. But the proposal didn't go down exactly like it was depicted on the big screen, and the ring wasn't the big, gaudy diamond we see in the film, either. Well, sort of new. Anyone who tried the item probably recognized that it was very similar to the Crunchwrap Supreme. In a 2013 interview, Austin described the proposal as a lot more lighthearted than it was in the movie. The grilled stuffed nacho featured ground beef, nacho cheese, sauce, sour cream, and crispy tortilla chips all wrapped in a flour tortilla folded into a triangle and then grilled. Again, it was basically just a smaller version of the Crunchwrap Supreme. And overall, the grilled stuffed nacho wasn't as good as the Crunchwrap Supreme as it lacked a lot of the crunchy texture that makes the Crunchwrap so addicting and special. The item was eventually taken off the Taco Bell menu, and then brought back on for a limited time in 2015, before it was discontinued again. He gave me a big box on Christmas Day, she said. Inside was another box, then another, and so it went on. It was like one of his playful games. Eventually, I found a lovely jade ring inside the last small box. And while there's no such thing as too many Crunchwrap Supremes, the grilled stuffed nacho was just totally unnecessary for Taco Bell to add to their menu. 8. I was shocked. It just so wasn't what I was expecting. Blt Taco. As classic as some of the menu items at Taco Bell are, the chain is also known to try and invent new items to be cool and trendy. I just whispered, yes. Enter the Blt Taco of 2008. Sure, the Blt Taco was good, but it wasn't great, and it was kind of overrated. According to E! News, the Blt Taco was originally introduced as a special edition Halloween menu item, before coming back for a limited time in 2009. One of Taco Bell's commercials for the Blt Taco was pretty entertaining, as they tried to equate the taco with high-end fashion and luxury living. Freddie and Mary's estrangement was awkward and lengthy. Freddie Mercury and Mary Austin never did get married, and on that point the film gets a lot of things right. Mercury started cheating on Austin with men, and his confession went down pretty much like the film said it did. He told her he was bisexual, and she replied, "No, Freddie, you're gay." But that's where the accuracy ends. The truth is there wasn't a lot of awkwardness at the end of their engagement, and there was no lengthy separation, either. Apparently in the 2009 advertisement, Taco Bell wanted people to think the Blt Taco was chic, but really, it was just a taco. Sure, it featured a special sauce that's not on a regular crunchy taco from the fast food chain, but that's about all that made it special. According to biography, Austin kind of just transitioned from ex-fiancé to dear friend and a part of his entourage, and the two remained close until Mercury's death in 1991. The black crunchy shell didn't actually offer any new flavor to the item, which is probably why it was discontinued. And no one has really missed it since. 7. In the film, their relationship was depicted as much more strained, and much more separate, after their breakup, and that's just not the way it was. Encharito. One of Taco Bell's biggest fan-favorite menu items that was discontinued would definitely be the Encharito. According to Copycat Recipes, the Encharito was originally introduced onto the Taco Bell menu in the 70s, and was basically the fast food chain's version of an enchilada. The original Encharito featured a corn tortilla filled with ground beef, beans, and onions, and then topped with a red chili sauce, olives, and cheese.
In fact, Mercury continued to think of Austin as his wife, and was once quoted as saying, "All my lovers asked me why they couldn't replace Mary, but it's simply impossible. The only friend I've got is Mary, and I don't want anybody else. To me, she was my common-law wife. Again, it was basically an enchilada. To me, it was a marriage." Ray Foster rejected Bohemian Rhapsody and got a rock through his window as thanks. One of the more entertaining scenes in the film is the meeting between Queen and Ray Foster. The fuzzy-haired, sunglasses-wearing Emmy executive who is too short-sighted to see that Bohemian Rhapsody is a masterpiece. Foster is played by Mike Myers, and the whole scene is really just a nod to the famous moment in the Wayne's World movie, in which Myers and his head-banging buddies are rocking out in a car to the legendary anthem. In the biopic, Foster complains that Bohemian Rhapsody is 6 bloody minutes, and that they should choose I'm in Love with My Car as the band's next single instead. That's the kind of song teenagers can crank up the volume in their car and bang their heads to, he declares. Bohemian Rhapsody will never be that song. It's a funny moment, even more so if you're a Wayne's World fan, and it should be pretty obvious that it never actually happened. But not only that, Ray Foster wasn't even a real person. According to Rolling Stone, he's loosely based on Emmy chief Roy Featherstone, who did think Bohemian Rhapsody was too long to be a single. But the rest of the scene, and the character, are pure fiction. Freddie Mercury fired John Reid in the back of a limo. We the audience are just starting to figure out how much we should hate Paul Prenter in that moment where Queen's manager John Reid gently suggests that Freddie Mercury should consider making a solo album. And as any Mexican food lover knows, it would be pretty nice to get an enchilada at a drive-thru instead of a sit-down restaurant. Prenter, who in a previous scene insists that the solo album thing will go down better if it comes from Reid, explicitly denies having anything to do with the idea, and so Mercury boots Reid out of the limo. According to Ultimate Classic Rock, it didn't happen like that at all. In fact, Reid's departure was rather anticlimactic, and went something like, I'm leaving, okay, cool. Reid left Queen in 1977, and the band still remembers their relationship pretty fondly. We had a good working relationship with John, Taylor said in the 2011 Queen documentary Days of Our Lives. He was very fiery and very feisty, but so were we. So we weren't scared of him. Freddie Mercury quit Queen to go solo. Every film has to have a low point, when the protagonist makes the wrong choice, and bad things start to happen. In Bohemian Rhapsody, that moment comes when Mercury tells his bandmates that he's tired of it all, and he wants to leave the band to work on a solo project. But, the item was taken off the Taco Bell menu in 1993, before it was brought back again with a few tweaks and then permanently taken off the menu in 2013. For anyone who was able to get an Encharito at Taco Bell before it was discontinued, it might have just been their most beloved menu item. But, at the end of the day, it wasn't that tasty and was discontinued for a reason. His bandmates are devastated and betrayed, and they all part on very bad terms, with Taylor spitting out the uber-dramatic accusation, "You just killed Queen." Again, that's not exactly what happened. The changes Taco Bell made to the Encharito might have been what led to its inevitable downfall. According to Ultimate Classic Rock, the band did indeed take a break after the 1982 release of their album Hot Space, but it wasn't a break up, specifically, and everyone was pretty much on board with the idea. Still, you might be able to find an Encharito at your local Taco Bell if you get lucky, because it's so easy to whip up. 6. Volcano Taco. In 2008, Taco Bell debuted a few menu items all with a volcano theme. One of the most popular and delicious volcano items was the Volcano Taco, which was basically just an extra spicy crunchy taco. Mercury wasn't the only one working on a solo project at the time, either. May was already working on a solo record called Star Fleet Project, and Taylor was getting ready for a solo album of his own. With spicy lava sauce, it could be the spiciest taco ever, a Taco Bell commercial claims. And honestly, the Volcano Taco was spicier than your typical taco from Taco Bell. It featured a spicy red shell, seasoned ground beef, and the typical taco toppings of lettuce and cheese, but the spicy lava sauce was key to making the Volcano Taco such a hit. And their time apart was hardly isolating. Even today, there are certain hacks you can use to try and order something close to the Volcano Taco, though it's definitely not the same.
For spice lovers, the Taco Bell Volcano Taco was a pretty great option and has definitely been missed since it was discontinued. In the Mercury biography A Kind of Magic, Taylor said he didn't think Mercury even wanted to be doing a solo album. It's just that he got an awful lot of money from CBS. And though it might not be the most popular item no longer on the menu, it's pretty darn beloved. 5. When it came down to actually doing a solo album, he did sort of miss us. Chicken Caesar grilled stuffed burrito. Anytime Taco Bell has tried to venture out of their typical Mexican-inspired flair, it hasn't really done well. Their seafood salad was especially disappointing, as was the spicy chicken Crunchwrap Supreme. He used to ring me up, and I'd have to fly to Munich to do his background vocals. Big, bad Prenter. Every film needs a villain, and in Bohemian Rhapsody it's Paul Prenter, Freddie Mercury's one-time manager and man with evil intentions. But in 2003, Taco Bell launched some new menu items that were a shift from their typical fare, one of which wasn't their best, but was interesting. In the movie, Prenter is depicted as controlling and selfish, failing to pass along Mercury's messages and running pretty much every aspect of the singer's life while friends fade away and opportunities pass by. After Mercury wises up and fires him, Prenter goes public, telling the media all of Mercury's secrets in a television interview. The Chicken Caesar grilled stuffed burrito was basically just a chicken Caesar wrap, with a slight Taco Bell twist, crispy red tortilla strips. First of all, the burrito was pretty expensive compared to other menu items at $2.99, according to the Los Angeles Times. As Taco Bell's chief marketing officer Greg Creed told the publication, "We're repositioning the brand, and the Chicken Caesar grilled stuffed burrito was just one way they went about that." While the burrito was good, it wasn't that different from any other Caesar wrap, which was probably why it was discontinued. For the Chicken Caesar salad lover's burrito, think outside the bun, one commercial for the item exclaimed. But how much of a bad guy was Paul Prenter, really? It is certainly true that the other members of Queen hated him. In fact, according to Metro, May and Taylor didn't like the sound of Hot Space after it was released, and they blamed Paul Prenter's influence. Well, it might be missed, but it's still not the most popular discontinued Taco Bell item, that's for sure. 4. Caramel apple empanada. Taco Bell might be known for tacos, burritos, and nachos, but they also have some menu items to satisfy your sweet tooth. Unfortunately, one of those menu items was discontinued in 2019, to the disappointment of fans everywhere. The caramel apple empanada was a delicious dessert that was basically caramel apple pie filling inside a crispy shell that was deep fried. And it is also true that the dude was a jerk, but the details in the film are all off. The timing of his firing is wrong. For example, he was actually still working for Mercury during Live Aid, and he didn't go public after he was fired, but before, and it was in print, not on television. Yeah, if it sounds delicious, that's because it was. But, when Brand Eating reached out to Taco Bell about the caramel apple empanada, the restaurant didn't seem keen on bringing them back. Those were a big hit but exited menus earlier this year, while the Cinnamon Twists and Cinnabon Delights, 2, 4 or 12-pack, remain. A spokesperson wrote back. It's pretty disappointing that Taco Bell took away one of their most delicious desserts, especially because their current dessert menu is pretty lacking with only 2 items, only one of which is really worth getting, the Cinnabon Delights. Honestly, part of what made a late-night Taco Bell run so amazing was the caramel apple empanada, and it's definitely missed. 3. Mercury terminated Prenter's employment after he sold a story to The Sun that ran with the scandalous headline, "AIDS Kills Freddie's 2 Lovers." So the dirt selling was actually the reason for the firing, not the result of it. The long delay before Live Aid was because of the band's breakup. Unlike in the film, real-life Queen never actually broke up, so this detail can't be true already. It actually seems to have been invented to forward the idea that Mercury, with his recent AIDS diagnosis, was eager to reconcile with his musical family and get back to his life's purpose of writing songs and making music. Cheeserito. As far as things on the Taco Bell menu go, the Cheeserito is probably the most simple menu item out there. It's quite literally just a flour tortilla with melted cheese, their Mexican pizza sauce, and scallions all rolled up. It's small and definitely more of a snack, especially compared to other Taco Bell menu items, but people love it. Honestly, when you wanted a middle-of-the-night snack from Taco Bell, the Cheeserito was the perfect choice. The Cheeserito is so beloved that there are even hacks for how to order one at your local Taco Bell. And while they no longer carry the Mexican pizza sauce, it works well with hot sauce, too. So, if you missed the Cheeserito and are craving a cheesy snack next time you head to Taco Bell, try ordering it from their secret menu. It might be discontinued, but because it's so popular, you could get lucky and get it anyway. 2. The truth is that not only was the band not broken up, they'd just returned from a world tour 2 months earlier. According to Slate, the real reason for the band's late entry into Live Aid was because Bob Geldof, the show's organizer, wasn't sure he wanted them there. At the time, they were kind of being collectively shunned by the rock and roll community for a series of strange touring decisions. First, a concert in Argentina, which was under the rule of a corrupt and murderous dictatorship, then in apartheid South Africa. Then, when the Live Aid invitation finally did come, the band hesitated. But it wasn't because Paul Prenter failed to pass along the message, it was because they didn't like playing in daylight, and they weren't sure the sound at the event would be up to their standards. Blt Taco. Over the years, Taco Bell has definitely had some interesting menu additions, most of which came with certain themes. Fortunately for rock and roll history, and the film, Queen finally agreed, and turned out what is widely believed to be one of the greatest musical performances of all time. Freddie's diagnosis came just before Live Aid in what is probably the biggest liberty that movie makers took with the Freddie Mercury story. We see Mercury's health start to deteriorate as he's working on his solo album, not long before the epic Live Aid performance that culminates the movie. You'll remember their volcano-themed menu featuring the Volcano Taco, right? Well, in the 90s, Taco Bell introduced their new, sizzlin' bacon menu, and featured 3 new menu items to go along with the theme. Just before Live Aid, Mercury tells his bandmates that he has AIDS, and they rally around him in support. Now, none of these menu items were really on par with the Mexican theme at Taco Bell, but they had their appeal. There was a bacon cheeseburger burrito, and chicken club burrito, and a Blt Taco. All sound intriguing, but it was the Blt Taco that really reigned supreme. Like the name would imply, it was a soft taco with bacon, lettuce and tomato, topped with cheese and a special club sauce. Basically, it was a Blt wrap, with a little special Taco Bell flair, and it was absolutely delicious. Even though the Blt Taco had bacon in it, it didn't seem too heavy, and was a great lunch option from Taco Bell. But according to Ultimate Classic Rock, the film got the dates all wrong. By most accounts, Mercury wasn't diagnosed until 1987, 2 years after Live Aid. Of all the film's fictions, critics have probably been most up in arms about this one, writing that it was an insult to Mercury to suggest that having AIDS somehow had something to do with his epic performance at Live Aid. Sadly, it was discontinued in the 2000s and never seen again. 1. But it's hard to know what critics would have said if the film had taken the opposite approach by just ignoring the AIDS diagnosis altogether. Bell Beefer. The Bell Beefer just might be Taco Bell's most popular discontinued item. Imagine a sloppy Joe, but with Mexican spices. Or, you could also look at the Bell Beefer as a regular ground beef taco, but on a hamburger bun. It featured ground beef, lettuce, tomato, cheese, and a sauce all in between 2 hamburger buns. The menu item was first introduced at Taco Bell in 1975, and was super popular for a while. Of course, the Bell Beefer was eventually discontinued in the 90s before making a sort of comeback in 2010 and then being permanently discontinued in 2012. Of course, it makes sense that Taco Bell would get rid of the Bell Beefer as it was essentially a taco on a bun, and one of their later slogans was to think outside the bun. But fans of the Bell Beefer were still upset. After all, a taco on a bun sounds pretty delicious. Fortunately, there are plenty of recipes you can try to recreate the iconic menu item. It's clear, though, that filmmakers did not want Bohemian Rhapsody to be the tragic story of a man in decline, but rather the uplifting story of a man who became a superstar. The Bell Beefer might be gone from Taco Bell's menu, but it will probably never be forgotten. They couldn't ignore the tragic circumstances of his death, either, hence the AIDS diagnosis time shuffle side by side with Freddie Mercury's finest on-stage accomplishment. Jim Hudden worked for Freddie Mercury as waitstaff. Freddie Mercury's longtime partner Jim Hudden was indeed a strong positive influence in the last years of his life, but the way they met was nothing like it was depicted in the movie. In the movie, Hudden is working as waitstaff for Freddie Mercury, and Mercury hits on him while Hudden is cleaning up after a huge party at the singer's home. The two share some deep conversation, then Hudden walks off, leaving Mercury to scour the phone directory in hopes of finding him again. The real-life details are a lot more boring and way less romantic. According to Vanity Fair, the two actually met at a gay nightclub in the mid-1980s, when Hudden was working as a hairdresser. Mercury offered to buy Hudden a drink, but Hudden refused. The two did reconnect a year and a half later, but not using the phone book. It was just at another nightclub. It's one of those embellishments that doesn't make a lot of sense. It's sweet and crazy stalker romantic to think that Mercury put that much effort into tracking down a guy he'd once had a single conversation with, but it's also kind of unnecessary. Great love stories don't always have to begin with cheesy romance. Mary Austin and Jim Hudden formed a bond at Live Aid. There doesn't seem to be any record of whether Jim Hudden and Mary Austin actually stood next to each other backstage at Live Aid as they do in Bohemian Rhapsody, but it seems pretty unlikely. The film shows the pair marveling at Mercury's performance, which is at least partially accurate, since Jim Hudden recalled being gobsmacked while watching the show, and even shows them embracing at one point. But the truth is that Mary Austin and Jim Hutton were probably not chummy. In fact, after the singer's death, Austin inherited Freddie's house and the bulk of his estate, and then took it upon herself to kick Hutton out of the house, even though Mercury had said he wanted Hutton to stay. According to journalist Tim Tiemann, Hutton was given 3 months to pack up his stuff and leave, and he then used the £500,000 the singer left him to buy a house in West London and build a second home in Ireland. So he wasn't left in the lurch or anything, but Mary Austin clearly didn't want him to stick around.